Pause for a moment and imagine the following scenario: an ordinary worker, without a college degree, wakes up early, goes to the factory or the office, works 8 hours, comes home, has dinner with the family, and goes to sleep knowing that the paycheck from that month will be enough to pay for the house, the car, food, basic health insurance, and still leave a little money aside. This is not fiction, nor exaggerated nostalgia. For millions of Americans, this was everyday reality in the United States during the 1970s. Today, that same scene sounds almost absurd. And that is exactly where curiosity, and shock, begin. In the 1970s, the American economy lived an interesting paradox. There was inflation, oil crises, geopolitical tensions, and deep social changes. Even so, money had weight. It had density. It had real value. A paycheck was not just a number deposited in a bank account, it represented access, stability, and predictability. The federal minimum wage was around $1.60 per hour at the beginning of the decade. At first glance, that seems ridiculously low. But adjusted to the context of the time, that wage bought something rare today: basic financial peace. The cost of living followed wages in a far more balanced way. Rent, food, transportation, and healthcare consumed a much smaller share of monthly income. The average price of a home in the United States ranged between $17,000 and $24,000. In many regions outside major cities, it was even lower. Mortgages did not require decades of extreme debt. A young couple could buy a home after only a few years of stable work. There was no need for inheritance, massive family help, or 2 or 3 simultaneous jobs. New cars cost around $3,500 to $4,000. Gasoline, even during the oil crisis, rarely exceeded 50 cents per gallon for much of the decade. A gallon of milk cost less than $1. A basic grocery basket did not compete directly with rent for a worker's paycheck. But perhaps the most curious, and least discussed, factor was time. The amount of time required to achieve basic things. In the 1970s, the number of work hours needed to buy a home, a car, or pay for a year of education was dramatically lower than today. Life itself was not consumed merely to survive. Fast forward to the present day, and the contrast is almost brutal. Today, the federal minimum wage has been frozen at $7.25 per hour since 2009. Even in states with higher wages, nominal increases have not kept up with the real cost of living. What changed was not just the value of money, but the relationship between effort and reward. The average price of a home now easily exceeds $400,000 in many regions. Rent consumes 30%, 40%, or even more than 50% of monthly income for millions of families. Buying a new car often requires long-term financing with high interest rates. Items that were once considered accessible durable goods have become status symbols or late-life achievements. The most uncomfortable curiosity appears when we compare income and productivity. Today's American worker produces far more than the worker of the 1970s. Technology increased efficiency, automation reduced costs, and the economy grew in absolute terms. Yet the average worker feels constantly behind, constantly late, constantly owing something. In the 1970s, industrial, administrative, and service jobs offered stability. Unions were stronger, benefits like pensions and health insurance were more common, and the idea of a career carried real weight. It did not mean extreme wealth, but it meant predictability. Today, the economy offers more options, more paths, and more talk about opportunity. But it also offers more uncertainty. Temporary contracts, gig work, and multiple income streams are often required just to maintain a basic standard of living. Risk has been transferred from the system to the individual. Another curious aspect is the psychological perception of the economy. In the 1970s, even during difficult times, there was a collective sense that the future would be better. Progress felt almost automatic. Today, despite impressive technological advances, many people feel the opposite, working more to keep less. When numbers are adjusted for inflation, the conclusion becomes even more unsettling. The purchasing power of the minimum wage and average wages has declined consistently over the decades. Not because the country became poorer, but because the distribution of gains changed profoundly. This leads to a rarely asked question: if the economy grew, technology advanced, and productivity increased, why did basic life become harder? In the 1970s, one income often supported an entire family. Today, two incomes are often not enough. Access to housing, healthcare, education, and even leisure has become more expensive relative to wages. Free time has shrunk. Stress has increased. The margin for error has nearly disappeared. Perhaps the greatest curiosity lies not only in the numbers, but in the silence around them. Why is this comparison so rarely made clearly? Why does the dominant narrative talk so much about progress, yet avoid comparing effort versus results across generations? The United States of the 1970s had real problems: inequality, crises, social limitations, but it had something that feels increasingly distant today. It had an economy where ordinary work still bought an ordinary life. And this is where the subject becomes deeper, more uncomfortable, and more open-ended. Understanding what changed between the 1970s and today is not just nostalgia or historical comparison. It is a key to understanding the present, and questioning the future now being built. Today, managing money in the United States is no longer just about personal organization. It has become a survival strategy. The economy changed, the cost of living exploded, and the rules of the game are no longer the same. Those who keep using an old financial mindset often pay a high price today. The first necessary shift is understanding that stability is no longer guaranteed. Fixed jobs, solid benefits, and predictable retirement plans are no longer the norm for most people. Relying on a single source of income is now a real risk. Whenever possible, diversifying income, even modestly, creates protection. This is not about getting rich fast, but about reducing vulnerability. Another essential strategy is controlling lifestyle, not status. Many Americans have been pushed into consumption patterns incompatible with their real income. Long-term car loans, stacked subscriptions, oversized housing, and installment purchases create the illusion of comfort while quietly draining the future. Reducing fixed costs is often more powerful than trying to earn more. Housing decisions, in particular, require cold logic. Buying a home today is not automatically a sign of financial success. In some cases, renting can be a strategic choice, as long as it allows saving and investing. The mistake is not renting, but failing to build reserves while renting. Speaking of reserves, one of the most important pillars of modern financial protection is an emergency fund. In an unstable environment, unexpected events are the rule, not the exception. Having 3 to 6 months of essential expenses saved can mean the difference between a setback and collapse. This money is not meant to grow fast, it is meant to exist when everything fails. Debt is another critical area. High-interest debt, especially credit cards, destroys any attempt at progress. In the 1970s, credit was used cautiously; today, it is aggressively pushed. The rule should be simple: if a debt does not increase real income or meet an absolute necessity, it is probably working against you. Financial education must also be active. Blind trust in systems, promises, or optimistic speeches is no longer enough. Understanding inflation, interest, taxes, and purchasing power is no longer optional. It is self-defense. The less you understand, the more expensive the system becomes for you. Investing, even with small amounts, is no longer a privilege. Ignoring investments today means accepting that your money will lose value over time. This is not about risky bets, but about protecting purchasing power. Leaving everything idle is, in practice, paying an invisible tax called inflation. Time is another overlooked factor. Working more hours does not guarantee more security. Efficiency, strategic skills, and conscious choices matter more than exhaustion. Not every opportunity is worth the cost. In a world of constant fatigue, protecting physical and mental health is also a form of wealth preservation. Perhaps the most uncomfortable advice is this: stop believing the system will automatically adjust in your favor. Governments change, policies shift, crises appear without warning. Financial responsibility has largely fallen on the individual. This is not fair, but it is reality. And here comes the final provocation. If decades ago one ordinary income supported an ordinary life, and today two incomes barely support the basics, the question is not only how to spend better, but how long this model can last. How many more generations will work more to achieve less before questioning the rules of the game? If this content made you reflect, share your perspective in the comments. If you believe understanding economics is a form of protection, subscribe to the channel. And if something here made you uncomfortable, that may be exactly why it needs to be discussed.